The term BRIC was coined by Jim O'Neill, a former Goldman Sachs economist, in a 2001 research paper titled "The World Needs Better Economic BRICS." In the paper, O'Neill identified Brazil, Russia, India, and China as four emerging economies with the potential to become major global players. O'Neill was inspired to create the term after noticing the rapid economic growth in these four countries, which he believed would have a significant impact on the world economy. He saw them as having the potential to challenge the dominance of the G7. The term BRIC quickly caught on and was widely used by economists and policymakers to refer to these four countries. In 2010, South Africa was added to this group and the term was changed to BRICS to reflect the new member. The BRICS countries have since become major players in the global economy, and that is up until now. The ongoing war in Ukraine has raised questions about BRICS, the bloc of these four major emerging economies, and their commitment to the principles of respect for territorial integrity and sovereignty. BRICS have come under immense scrutiny because of their response to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. BRICS is an important player in the international system, but their principles have individually and collectively been called into question by Western media, the European Union countries, and also by the United States. And this is specifically following the unwillingness of many of these countries to publicly condemn Russia and their decision to adopt a neutral position while calling for dialogue between Ukraine and Russia. The BRICS stand has been interpreted by analysts and critics as implicit support for Russia. But now, various other countries of the so-called Global South are taking their cue from BRICS. Many of these countries want to have nothing to do with this ongoing war, or at the very least, they don't want to be forced to take a position in a war not of their making. On Crux Decode, what relevance does BRICS have today in the context of the Russia-Ukraine war? Has this war, much like the Iraq war a decade ago, forced countries to take positions that they would rather not? And can BRICS truly emerge as a voice of the Global South? Voting at the United Nations General Assembly and the UN Security Council strongly suggests that BRICS countries vote together only when there is a shared area of interest. If you take a closer look at the historical voting patterns of BRICS countries, their voting patterns, for example, on nuclear weapons at the UNGA, it illustrates that BRICS members and their votes diverge considerably. South Africa and Brazil do not have nuclear weapons, and nuclear non-proliferation is an important theme for both of these countries. India, China, and Russia, on the other hand, are nuclear states, so they make sure not to undermine their respective nuclear armament policies. So clearly, there's a divergence in how they vote on these issues. But in different votes at the United Nations since this Russia-Ukraine war began, BRICS countries have been voting differently depending on what the question of the vote is. India and South Africa have mostly abstained, other than when it comes to a humanitarian question like Bucha. China has been more supportive of the Russian position and has only abstained when it comes to a vote on the question of territorial integrity and sovereignty. This is an indication of the overarching objective of BRICS, which is to make the international order more equitable by calling out the hypocrisy and double standards of the West. In fact, in the lead-up to the 2022 BRICS summit last year, the BRICS foreign ministers issued a joint statement highlighting their support for a dialogue between Russia and Ukraine, and also shared concerns that they have regarding the humanitarian crisis, which continues to unfold even to this day. Now, key is that BRICS took no common stand on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. They chose instead to recall their respective national positions. However, while both South Africa and India have been vocal in calling out the West on their double standards, they have been less willing to outrightly condemn violations of principles of territorial integrity and sovereignty by their own BRICS counterparts. But that is not stopping other countries of the Global South from trying to get a foot inside the BRICS door. Perhaps most of these countries are also loath to taking positions on a war that they had no role in creating or have no interest in fomenting further. The Russian Foreign Minister recently, Sergei Lavrov, had said that over a dozen countries have formally applied to join BRICS following the group's decision to allow new members earlier this year. In total, the BRICS grouping as it stands currently accounts for about 40% of the global population and almost a quarter of the world's GDP. The GDP figure is expected to double to 50% of global GDP by the end of this decade. Expanding BRICS will immediately accelerate that process. Concerning a BRICS expansion, countries including Algeria, Argentina, and Iran had all applied for membership of BRICS, while it's already known that countries like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, and Afghanistan are interested, along with Indonesia, which made a formal application to join BRICS at last year's G20 summit in Bali, which it hosted. Other likely contenders for membership include Kazakhstan, Nicaragua, Nigeria, Senegal, Thailand, and the United Arab Emirates. All of these countries had their finance ministers present at the BRICS expansion dialogue that was held in May. For South Africa, membership of BRICS is an important vehicle for its foreign policy. It provides an additional platform for this middle power to punch above its weight in international affairs. For Brazil, at least under the current president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, under whom BRICS was created in the first place 20 years ago, he sees this grouping in a similar way, a platform to advance Brazil's influence abroad and build multilateral partnerships with other global powers. In fact, the very second country that Lula visited after assuming the current term as president was China, where he was given a red carpet welcome. There, while he was in China, he openly criticized America, asking it to wake up and smell the global reality that no neutral third country wants to take a position on this seemingly never-ending war. That statement did not go down particularly well in Washington. It may be an existential war to Europe and even to NATO, but to much of the global South, they are indifferential to this war. For India, the BRICS mechanism amplifies its voice on development challenges in the global South, but critically, it also enables engagement with China, a country with which India has gone to war. It still has an ongoing border dispute, and in a more multilateral setting on issues of common interest, India believes that this is a forum where they can continue to cooperate with China. And of course, for China, BRICS is a platform for it to increase its influence as a global power player on a multilateral stage. BRICS also sees itself as an advocate for reforming the global order, which has been dominated by the West, whether it's the United Nations and its various organs or institutions, the Bretton Woods institutions like the World Bank and the IMF. This protracted war is already eroding other important global agenda items like sustainable development, climate change, etc. Russia's actions have also created a precedent in the same way that the US invasion of Iraq did 10 years ago. For powerful states cannot afford to ignore the principles of territorial integrity and sovereignty, and if they do, there are dire consequences that will follow. Once again, 10 years later, this war is foisting choices, very hard choices, on countries which may have no interest in fomenting this war, or for that matter, taking a position one way or the other, backing Ukraine or backing Russia until we see some form of a ceasefire.